Sherlock Holmes once told Watson, "You see, but you do not observe." My problem was, as a manager, middle manager, or CIO, I saw a lot of stuff, but I didn't necessarily observe. And even if I did observe it, the stigma of saying either I need help or they need help is just something we don't do in IT very well. The biggest thing I wanted to get rid of was the stigma of raising your hand and saying I need help, and not generating a culture, which I probably have been guilty of generating in the past, of you're in IT, it's a rough and tumble, 24/7, always changing, fluke environment, get with it. And if you can't get with it, get out. Because that's not right.
Hello again, and welcome to today's episode on prioritizing mental health in IT. Now, some of the best advice that I've ever received has been about things that I didn't necessarily want to hear, but I needed to hear, right? For ITSM professionals and leaders, discussing mental health issues is one such topic. And today we have someone who's the hero we need, but perhaps not the hero we deserve. Daniel Breston, who's affectionately called Bad Dan by the IT community. So now you get the Batman reference. Dan is a 50 plus year veteran of IT. He's a former CIO and an ITSM consultant. He's also a trainer, blogger, speaker, and he's on the board of ITSMF UK and a fellow of the British Computer Society. Welcome, Dan. It's an honor to have you join us.
Thank you very much. I'm not on the board of ITSM. I was.
Okay.
I'm off now. I'm just one of their industry ambassadors. But thank you very much. And also thank you for getting Atomic Work to donate to a mental health charity. That's much appreciated.
That was very thoughtful of you, and very kind of you. Great to have you here, and I'm hoping that today's session and our ongoing work together creates somewhat of a movement that eases up the stigma around mental health discussions among IT professionals. This is going to be a great one. Let's start by playing a video that you mentioned the first time that we spoke. And since the others are not able to, Dan, let me know when you're able to see my screen.
I can see it. You ready to go? Just blow it up.
Yeah. So this was a pretty viral campaign from the Norwich City Football Club. And Dan, I'll let you take it away. And so perhaps we can start with the big four mental health issues you've written about. And could you unpack it for us and for the audience?
Sure. So the reason why I asked Sajesh to show the video is, as he's already said, and you can probably see from the different pictures hanging in my room, I'm a detective, comics, books, mysteries fan, and have been almost all of my life. Sherlock Holmes once told Watson, "You see, but you do not observe." And my problem was, as a manager, middle manager, or CIO, or principal consultant, or trainer, or any role that you want to mention in IT is I saw a lot of stuff, but I didn't necessarily observe. And even if I did observe it, the stigma of saying either I need help or they need help is just something we don't do in IT very well. I mean, in IT, you're expected to work. I mean, Sajish and I were talking about this just before this broadcast started. You know, you're expected to work 24/7. On holidays, you should be able to take a phone call, you know, type of thing. The higher up the ladder you go, and it's creating a culture that's not psychologically safe. And as I started to listen to various people that were, you know, expressing their concerns about mental health in IT, I realized that it was pretty pandemic in our business. There were very few times, and here's one example of when maybe it wasn't an issue. People were in a psychologically safe environment. I mean, there was a European DevOps conference, Gene Kim's IT Revolution, where a Microsoft engineer got up in front of a room of several hundred people and said, "Hi, and he said his name, I'm a Microsoft engineer. I have a team of 9, and we work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And he stopped. We don't do weekends. We don't do nights. We get very few phone calls after we leave. All of our development work, all of our testing work, all of our approval work, all of our release work, and all of our deployment work is done Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And we don't turn over to another shift." You could have heard a pin drop in the room of people just going, "Really?" I mean, this was a gentleman that didn't suffer from anxiety. His organization was supporting him. He didn't suffer from stress of meeting deadlines. He didn't suffer from the depression of having to, you know, and I'm just using work related things now. You know, he didn't suffer from the depression of things failing and now what does he do, or doesn't have the right skills or whatever, because he was on they used the skills framework for the information age, Sophia, to be able to keep him on track with what he needed to know. And he obviously didn't suffer from burnout. I mean, he did what he had to do when he had to do it, and then he understood why. And at the end of every day, he could go, "My team, because of what we did, helped someone internally at Microsoft, or helped Microsoft achieve a goal, or helped a customer." So from a mental health point of view, he may have had issues, but they weren't necessarily work-related or generated. So with ITSM.tools, which is where you found me, Sajish, started to write articles with Stephen Mann. And you know, we created this because I had to stick with the Batman image. We created a gang, okay, called the Big Four. And they were anxiety, stress, depression, and burnout. Yes. And as I started thinking about it, it became apparent to me that because I'm not a medical person, I've been in IT since I was 17, and I'm now kicking 70. So, you know, if I could give these things that all have medical definitions a persona, I could address them. I could go, anxiety, go away. Depression, go away. I know it sounds simplistic, but actually it helps. It's the first thing of recognizing that you have one of these, you know, concerns. I'm not going to call them an issue because it's not an issue. It's a concern that's affecting you. And the biggest thing I wanted to take over, to get rid of, was the stigma of raising your hand and saying, "I need help," no matter what level you are, and not generating a culture, which I probably have been guilty of generating in the past, of you're in IT, it's a rough and tumble, 24/7, always changing, VUCA environment, get with it. And if you can't get with it, get out, because that's not right. We need people that are engaged mentally, engaged physically, to be able to do the work better and safer. Now, whether it's faster or not, that depends on the need, but that's a different discussion. But definitely better and safer have to work hand in hand. So we have this gang called the Big Four, and we created their gang leader, Stigma. Okay, because if stigma exists, they exist. If stigma doesn't exist, they don't exist as much. Okay, and we wanted to figure out a way around them, and that caused us to start to look at some different ways of dealing with them. But Stephen and I didn't want to go down the medical route of having to deal with them. We wanted to create things that made more sense to middle managers or senior leaders in organizations. So before I continue, do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
I I have been in the IT space very briefly before getting into marketing, and having seen both sides, I think one, it was the right call. Marketers have been guilty of pretending to be experts when they're not. Writers pretending to be subject matter experts. It's one of my pet peeves, and I've been guilty of that as well. So I think it was a right call to not being pretentious and being uh, 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 projecting yourself as an expert, as a medical expert, right? And simplifying it for the community, simplifying it for lay people, especially people who have the stigma, who, like you mentioned in your article, that if you cannot handle the stress, you don't belong here, right? That's a rhetoric that IT folks face. And that's a rhetoric that we as IT leaders also have been guilty of projecting, right, for the team. And you've been an IT leader. How do IT leaders lead from the front, be vulnerable, and create a psychologically safe environment for their team, starting with themselves?
So one of the things of the DevOps movement and ITSM or Agile or Lean IT, or whatever marketing term you want to put against it, they've all drawn on Dr. Ron Westrum's generative three cultures, right? You're either a very macro management, very detail oriented, very disruptive type of manager, or you're a manager that wants to get involved but doesn't know how to get involved as well as you should, or you're a generative leader. You're the type of leader who helps their individuals do better and safer. So a phrase that I hate is servant leadership.
Okay.
I'm not a servant, I'm a leader. Okay? And leader can be anyone. It can be a team leader, it can be a member of a team that is trying to help someone else do something, so peer to peer. Leader doesn't have to have a formal role or job description. So I want leadership to be across the board to anyone. And when we did that, we started looking at different models that we could use. And Dr. Jessica Drake created the 8 principles of neuro inclusion, an autistic perspective on innovating inclusive research. And I went, okay, that's enough. That's a big mouthful, but I'm going to take what she did because she's got a lot of terms that you can find in Harvard Business Review and other kinds of stuff. It sounds, kind of cool. And we'll use her because it's a creative license model. We'll use her model to create something that leaders can go with. So the first thing is respect. Okay, sounds obvious. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to say sounds obvious, but think about whether or not in your environment it actually occurs. So I'm going to give you my definition of respect. And Sajesh, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you have or have you seen individuals use the word empower?
Of course.
Okay. So empower to me is a very scary word.
Okay. Could
Okay.
you unpack that?
Well, you just empowered me to do what? How far can I go? Can I miss a deadline? Can I spend extra money? Can I bring in someone else from another team and stop them from doing their work to help me? Well, leaders come up and use language, and it terrifies individuals, and it doesn't show them respect. It doesn't show them the respect that they deserve to be able to understand the goals and needs of the organization or the team. It doesn't show the respect that you actually are there to cover their backside. It doesn't show, respect. So people get anxious, people get stressed, people work too hard to try to live up to your image, and because of that, they get depression or burned out. So the first thing we want to do is we want to show them a level of respect. Okay. If you raise your hand, just like in the video, I'm going to take the time to listen, and hopefully I won't be too late. Okay. The next thing that Dr. Drake suggested and that we took on was representation and inclusion. So Harvard Business Review years ago had this great mentoring article. And it said, as a mentor or a mentee, you should have three. You should have someone senior to you. You should have someone at your level, and you should have someone below you. So you're a CIO, your mentor is going to be a CEO or a CFO, someone. It could be someone at your level, and it should be someone below you. So think about this for a second. If you're a manager, if you're a scrum leader, if you're a, marketing person, the best person to always know what's really happening in your organization, the truth that's happening in your organization, is which part? The service desk. Okay? Because that's all the service desk does. Hello? Oh, okay, we're great. Thank you very much. Hello? Oh, okay, we're idiots. Thank you very much. They know the good stuff, the bad stuff. They know the good teams, the bad teams. They know the good apps, the bad apps. The question is, and the CTO of EE pointed this out in a talk for ITSMF, how much time does a leader spend in the service desk? Because throw away your reports. By the time you get the report, it's too late. Okay? You want to be able to spend time in the service desk, learning from them, going out to shop floors, going out to the different areas which use your IT, and see what the issues are, or see where you're actually helpful, and keep that going. Okay? So you want to have representation and inclusion. So I would invite the service desk to a senior meeting. I would take someone from the desk and I would invite him to a meeting, because that service desk person would listen to things and these things with different ears than I had.
That's true.
Okay. And they would come over to me and go, you don't really want to do that. And they would explain why. And I would go, you know what? You've got a point. See, it goes back to respect. And then continuous learning and experimentation. When I grew up with mainframes, it was very difficult to have a really good testing environment. We either got it right or we got it wrong and we fixed it in production. So I would say 95% of our tests were live. Okay, it was, okay, go live. Please don't break. The cloud allowed us to create, very cheaply actually, an entire copy of our production environment, and we could test to our heart's content. We could test with other teams. We could test new workflows. We could test new tools. Okay, so we could learn continuously. And if you benefit from things like the skills framework for the information age, SOFIA, then it can also help you go, hey, these are the skills you need for your particular job. Even if you're a retired person and you just want to know what's happening in IT, you can tone it down a little bit so that you don't become an enterprise architect. But, you still keep up with what's happening in technology. So continuous learning and continuous experimentation. Okay, so some of the best people I know in IT are actually over 80. You have barrier removal. What is the point of a leader? A leader is there to lead you, or a leader is there to remove the barriers so that as you go as a team, as a group, okay, the obstacles you confront are either overcome or removed before you even get there. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Leader group number one goes into a meeting, CAB, Change Advisory Board, and the moment he walks in, because he's the highest paid person in the room, he's the hippo, whatever he says is right. Right? What if the leader walked into the room and didn't speak until the very end? Okay, so this is a type of leader who understands that to respect the individuals in the room and to give them the right to be able to continuously learn and experiment and to continuously raise their hand and say, this is what we think. You don't have to get everybody on board to agree fully, but you do have to try to get everybody on board to say, at least we're going to try it. Okay, and the best way to do that is just to be quiet and let others talk. So you want to do that, but at the same time, you want to have clarity of purpose. Everybody should know exactly what they're doing that contributes to what they're doing, that contributes to what they're doing, that contributes to the organization, that contributes to customers. So in Lean IT, Lean has this very good concept called catchball, okay? Or they have a Japanese name for it, Hoshin Kanri. So the concept is this: I'm the CEO. You're my head of marketing, Sajesh. I've given you my goals, and you, as the head of marketing, turn those goals into goals for your team, and you throw the ball to them. Okay? If they have a problem, they throw the ball back to you. If you can't solve it, you throw the ball back to me. Okay, so it's catchball. It's back and forth communication, but it clarifies purpose. Okay, the words on the walls and the fancy posters and stuff like that, rip them off. Okay, get clarity of purpose. The goal is to be able to walk to any employee in the organization. This is what my first CEO did. This is what Netflix does. Okay, the goal is to be able to go to any person in the organization and go, do you know how you contributed today? Did you help someone in the organization? Or did you help the organization achieve a goal? Or did you help a customer? Okay. Did you do one of those three things today? And if you didn't, why? And be able to ask that question and the person not go, oh my God, I'm going to get fired for this answer. To have the person very freely go, well, this is why. And nothing happens, except for the fact that the manager takes it away and goes, okay, we have work to do. We have a barrier to remove. We have, some skills to do or something like that to get trained. And that gets thoughtful communication via outcomes into the organization, because now you're working on outcomes. All right, so back to reports. Every month, leaders get reports on their desk. They read the reports, they make some magic decision, and then at the end of the next month, they look at their report again to see whether or not they need. So basically what they're doing is they're saying, only 11 times a year am I going to affect the progress of this organization. Agile, DevOps, ITSM, value stream management, Lean. We should be making decisions that help us overcome volatile, unclear, uncertain change all the time. Because if we don't do that, our competitors are going to kick our butt, and our customers are just going to have a double click, leave us, and go someplace else. Okay, so we want to be able to have thoughtful outcomes. We want to have outcomes, and those outcomes and all of everything I've said before should lead to the last two things, which is psychological safety. So we want to be able to have people that feel that they're doing stuff in a way that matters to the organization. But if I'm in the AI community now and I read articles that some of the major AI tools are going into YouTube and ripping off hundreds of thousands of people for their knowledge, and I'm an AI developer or coder, I'm going, that's not the image I want. That's not creating a psychologically safe thing. That's putting me at risk. And the last thing is proactive support. So I want to be able to recognize the signs of people. Sajesh, you've been a little quiet in meetings, or some of your team are reporting that you're not really helping the way you should be, or think about the video again. You're getting too excited about stuff, but it's just surface. It's not really below. Can we talk? And you look at me and you go, everything's okay, Dan, not a problem. And I look back at you and go, Sajesh, can we talk? My time is your time. Let's just go grab a coffee or something, and let's talk about this. So to ask the first time, 99% of the people are going to go, everything's okay, boss. To ask the second time, slowly, clearly, okay, is going to say, my time is your time. Let's go and talk about this. I'm interested because you're part of the organization, and we need to work this out. So all of that helps to overcome the 4 issues of Big 4. But more clearly, it defeats stigma. Just takes it away. Okay? So I hope that was a very long and rambling thing. Sorry about that. But that was my, and Stephen's attempt to try to come up with a way of using words that people understood without getting into the medical jargon of blah, blah.
That was great, actually, and I wish more leaders would come forth and be approachable, and like you mentioned multiple principles there. I'd like to unpack one or two since we don't have the time to go through all of them. But
Okay.
like you mentioned, creating an environment of psychological safety, proactively reaching out to people, and helping them open up by giving them time, giving them the respect, and also communication, right? Communicating to them what is expected of them, so that they know that they're making a meaningful contribution to the business. And also, like you mentioned, the service desk has their ear to the ground, and they're the closest to the problem, bringing them to decision making meetings, and giving them a voice, giving them that respect, goes a long way, to also build the psychological safety that we spoke about. Since you mentioned AI, I'd like to unpack that aspect, right? There's been a lot of there's been a hit to psychological safety, for lack of a better term, because of AI. Now, this direct implication of that is job loss, because companies are leveraging AI for customer support, the level 0 to level 1 of IT support, in some cases, is being automated. I'd like to ask you 2 questions. The first part is, what can IT leaders and IT organizations in general, so read someone who's manning the service desk, someone whose bread and butter job is to answer phone calls, what can IT organizations throughout the hierarchy do to stay relevant, not only stay relevant, but also thrive and adapt this new movement that's going to wash across all organizations eventually. And I'll ask the second part of the question later. But what are your thoughts on uh, what actionable advice do you have for IT leaders and frontline agents?
So I went to a demo of a ITSM tool, who I won't mention the product because they'll come after me, kill me. Um, and the CTO stood up, and the audience was 60 of his top customers, and then a couple of senior consultants in London had been advised, asked like me to come in and talk. And he starts off, and this was several years ago because AI is actually not that new. But he starts off and he goes, Alexa, what are the top 4 incidents in my organization that need to be resolved? And Alexa comes back and tells him what the top 4 are. And everybody clapped. Wow, that's really cool. So I put my hand up and I said, do you guys think that's really cool? Yeah, that's very powerful. You guys think that the CTO bypassing everyone in this room, bypassing the service desk manager even, being able to get that information so that he can pick up the phone and go, where are we on this? Why isn't it being solved? You think that's pretty cool because that's exactly what just happened. And everybody just went, whoa. Now, for some reason, I was then asked to leave. Honestly. Came over to him and went, okay, you can leave now. Okay. But think about it. That's not a psychologically safe way of using AI. You've put pressure onto your team that they don't really, they've got enough pressure. Trust me. They don't need any more. Okay. So I love artificial intelligence. I'm in IT. I like the next shiny thing. And AI right now is the next shiny thing. Okay. But it has to be used in governance. It has to be used in a way that reduces risk to the organization and to staff. It has to be used in a way that enhances the profile of the organization and doesn't diminish it because of a news story. There's lots of it has to's about it. So it's still new. But to be honest with you, we had this when service desk tools started to come out into the market, or when cloud started to come out into the market. I mean, to me, this is just a different variation of something I've heard for the last half century. The difference with this, I think, is that not only can I mess up the organization because I'm using it wrong, but I can also be sued by lots of people because I inadvertently ripped them off. Or I use AI in such a way that shows bias towards individual. I mean, you remember the articles a couple of years ago where the first chatbots, when they came out, they were, how should we say, not very good in their answers sometimes, okay, in regards to people. So we have to be careful of those things, and we have to, a leader should read the news every day, right? You should get articles from the Register or somebody else to try to figure out, what's good and bad, and making sure then that his organization's not doing that. And I think AI is great. I think it's very powerful. It can help people do things. I also think AI is very dangerous if it's not used correctly.
That's true. And, the real life example that you shared, that's, I think today that's been amplified quite a lot, right? There are things that are being automated, multiple step processes, multiple processes that involve multiple applications and platforms are just being automated away. I feel that and I'm one of those people who are really bullish about AI and the potential of AI, but I feel that it can be leveraged to create more jobs and more meaningful work, because I'm sure everyone has everyone listening to this has come across the statement that I want AI to do or I want machines to do my laundry so that I can write and create art. I don't want AI to write and create art so I do my laundry and dishes, right? So
Yeah.
I think over time, as some of the mundane, repetitive work gets taken away from the plates of frontline workers, they can really expand themselves. And since we are on the topic of mental health, a lot of the stress comes from being on call 24/7. Right? You faced it. I've faced it in some capacity where you're just expected to be answerable for certain things, no matter what time of the day it is, right? I think AI can be leveraged to some extent to provide the first level of support, maybe even empathize, and I've used that term loosely, but do some level of sentiment analysis and pacify the end user, provide just some assurance before uh, it's escalated to an IT agent. But IT is one department where humans will always be required, right? End users might probably talk to a chatbot for something simple, but for something that involves multiple steps, something that involves a structured troubleshooting algorithm, they need an expert to reassure them and to handhold them, to solve the problem for them, because a human at the other end of the line would understand why Word not loading up or some other simple tool not loading up is, in my context, detrimental to my job. Perhaps I am working on a document that might be due tonight, but I'm not able to load up the tool that I need to use for the document. uh, Another aspect of it that you covered, I'd like for you to unpack, is around representation. And uh, generally there's been, I don't mean to split it on the basis of gender, but historically IT has been a very male dominated domain, right? I'd like to understand on both sides, right? As a man, has it been difficult for you to share, be vulnerable, or talk about mental health issues? And I'm talking about back when you were leading an IT organization, right? Because now you probably have a more wider perspective, and what was the environment like back then? And for female IT leaders, that's the second part of my question. For female IT leaders, uh, how have you seen some of the best, female leaders that you've come across grow and deal with this, lopsided ratio, and then this perception of this domain that it's male dominated, it's generally too technical, and being outnumbered like that. So both sides of the equation. How have you seen people
So I'm
handle
going to
it?
start with the second part of your question. The first three supervisors or managers I had were female.
Okay.
Okay. The interesting thing is because you're in a computer room surrounded by computers, you don't look at men, women. It's just people in the room. You're focused on the machine. You're focused on the code. You're focused on support. You're focused on the shiny stuff. And the fact that there's a lady behind you or a man behind you, I ignored for a good part of my career. Okay. Does it make it any easier or more difficult for a man or a woman to say they've got an issue? We can probably argue this till the cows come home. When I worked for a company that was doing 30% of the daily volume of every transaction, commodities or equity, in the United States and the UK on a daily basis, if you had a mental health issue, get over it, because we wanted to do 31%. We wanted to do 35%. Okay. And whatever you had to do to make that happen, because that was your bonus. That was your raise. That was, the reason of our business. So, and they didn't care whether or not you were a woman or a man. They wanted, more
Right.
trades done. So I think it's difficult for everybody. I think there's a group now of individuals, the Women in ITSM movement of Sophie Hussey, Lucy Grimwald,
Right.
that you should, definitely get as part of. And because I said women in ITSM, let me be perfectly clear here. There are a lot of guys that have joined this. Okay. So, people trying to help kids in schools, people trying to help to learn. Always remember that Ada Lovelace started the IT business. If it wasn't for Ada Lovelace, I don't know when IT actually would have started. So we all owe her a debt of thanks. Okay. The best service desk manager I ever had was a woman. I'm not saying that because service desk, I've had good and bad men, I've had good and bad women in the service desk, but the best I've ever had, this is an ITSM audience, probably primarily because you're an ITSM company. So, the best one I've ever had was a woman. I'm never going to find another person better than her. I think diversity in IT is occurring. I think it still has a long way to go. Okay. But is it worse in IT than it is in the HR department or in the marketing department or in the, financial part of the organization? I don't think so. I think it's the organization that sets whether or not you treat people as people and get over all the rest.
That's a great answer, and the women in IT community that like I connected to both of them, and I'm looking forward to great things from and perhaps even invite them to one of the episodes for all the aspiring female leaders who want to navigate the space and who want to grow in their career. Uh, I'd just like to understand how they can handle just the ratio that currently we are seeing. I think for each of the genders, like you said, it's there are good and bad male IT professionals. There are good and bad female IT professionals. Uh, but yeah, from a perspective of a leader who's able to show empathy and emotional connection, I think women are better equipped to emotionally connect, and it might be coming from a personal perspective, but and it might be coming from a perspective of looking at the women in my life, be able to understand emotions better, manage emotions better. But yeah, this is great, and
I've
I
I've
hope
I've worked with some very tough women, and they were
exactly
tough on the guys, and they were tougher on the women. The
right.
women in the organization got just as much banging, if not more, than the guys did, because she wanted them to grow and get tough, and the only way to do that, she felt, was to beat them into submission and give them hard skins. Did I agree with that? Not really, but it did seem to work. Okay, for whatever reason. Do
Got
we
it.
have?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have? Because I know we're challenged for time. Do we have questions you want to answer, or have you been cleverly doing that while you've been peppering me?
Actually, yeah. So one of the questions that I asked about, how has it been being a man in the industry, came from one of our audience members,
Okay.
and we also addressed one of the other questions about the community, right? The women in ITSM community is doing a great job, and whoever's listening, please do go check them out. Uh, and Dan, you've written about the Big Four. You've written about anxiety. We'll make sure to leave links in the attachment section so you can go read about it. Uh, before we end the session, what are uh, two tips that you would give? Like, if, let's say, you have to distill down everything that you've written about, everything that you train IT leaders about, and everything that you covered today into one short term and one long term bite sized nugget.
I'll give you
What should
three.
we take away?
The first
Please.
thing is stop getting reports. Just
Okay.
stop getting reports. Turn every report into a real-time dashboard. Then you're going to start figuring out what are the vanity metrics and what are the important metrics for everyone in the organization, because your real-time dashboard should be transparent to the organization. Okay? The second thing is get out of your desk, get out of your office, stop meetings. Okay? I used to spend 80% of my time as a manager in a meeting. What I want you to do is I want you to flip that. I want you to spend 80% or 70% even of your time not in the meeting, going out, being at the service desk, talking to customers, talking to users, talking to your staff, seeing what the issues are. Do what Lean calls a Gemba or a walkabout, to really learn what's happening and take notes while you're doing that, and then come in and turn that into challenges, a problem, that people should go solve, and give them the space and time to experiment to be able to solve those. So take advantage of value stream management and mapping, take advantage of Kanban and those types of things. And if you don't know what those are, there's plenty of tools out there that can help you, but more importantly, you need to understand the culture behind it and make sure that it's apparent to you. Okay. And the last thing is watch your language. Take some really big Post-it notes. Write the word empower. Write the words, I don't know, pick 5 or 6 words, put them into a room with a bunch of other Post-it notes, but they're smaller, and say, I need your definition of what you think this word means when I use it. Okay? So I don't want the Oxford Dictionary definition. I want to know when I say the word empower, when I do this, when I do that, okay? And don't sign the piece of paper, just stick it up there and then walk away and come back the next day and take them all down. And you'll be surprised. You're going to say something and they're going to go, this is what it means to us, and this is what you're doing to us. Okay? And it's going to change the way that you talk to people. It's going to change the way that you deal with people, hopefully, to be able to, recognize what the problem is. And if people don't want to do it because you'll recognize their handwriting, that's fine. Do it with mural. Give everybody a fake ID, Sacred Cow, something, then they can go into mural and, I wouldn't use Bat Dan because that gave me away, but, use something that, clearly says on there and do it with that. Use the same word with some of your internal users. Use the same exercise with some of your, peers. Take use of gamification, because gamification will really give you a good feeling of, this is the way that we're doing stuff. That's why you're angry at me. Okay, now I'm beginning to understand now why you're angry at me.
Great. Thanks so much for that, Dan. And although we mentioned that we'll share some of your work, some of your writing, in case someone wants to reach out to you and like understand this more, talk to you, and get a first-hand perspective, how do they find you? Where do they reach out?
Well, I'm one of many that are on this journey of trying to bring mental health up. So go to your local computer society, go to one of the ITSMF chapters in the world. Everyone's talking about humanizing IT or mental health in IT. Okay. Um, you can come and reach me in LinkedIn if you like, but you have to remember that I'm retiring, so I'm not on LinkedIn all the time. Uh, like I used to be. So I'm very slow in LinkedIn. So you need to have patience with me. You can go to itsm.tools. You can go to SDI. You can go to HDI to read the articles there on well-being. Look at the surveys, and they've been written by not only me but lots of other people, and you can get their perspectives, and just go into LinkedIn if you want to and put mental health in IT or well-being in IT, or and the people that come up, read their stuff, and if you're interested in them, link to them. But link with a message. Don't just hit the link button. Okay, that's boring. Link with a message that explains why you want to link to them. Okay, and start to use LinkedIn as a link to learn, and that means that you're collaborating and you're now on your way to doing respect.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. And our journey of working together started with me stumbling upon your article on ITSM.tools. I hope we continue to work together and we start a movement that really radicalizes the way we think about mental health in IT, the way we talk about it, and the perception around just easing the stigma around mental health in IT. Thanks so much for your time, Dan. I hope this was great and really valuable for our audience. And you know where to reach out to Dan and others who are vocal about and passionate about mental health in IT. Uh, Dan, any last words before we leave?
Just, I can't thank you enough, and I can't thank Atomic Works enough to becoming part of the Army, the community, the family of individuals that want to try to do better and safer in the technology environment. So really appreciate that once again. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We're happy to be a part of this journey and happy to help. Thanks, Dan. Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.